Good afternoon, all. Hope you're doing well. Happy Easter. Hope you're having a nice weekend. We have seen quite an interesting development on the USD. We've actually gone negative, and that's the first time that that's happened since we've been looking at the COT data in the QuasiDB service because um, from using Krishnan's data. Okay, so we used to use a different template, but ever since that Krishnan's given us this nice template here on Excel, it's the first time that's happened. It's the first time we've gone negative on the USD. So that is a big deal. Okay, so I think what we want to be doing as traders, we want to be careful tomorrow because we've got thin liquidity. But when the market opens properly Monday night, Tuesday, what we want to do is check your government bonds. Okay, this will give us a big tell about the dollar direction. Now, if these are green, we can see the dollar perform okay. If they're red, then we're going to see declines in the dollar, and this is indicating potential decline on the dollar. However, you can see the big decrease on the euro as well, which is more substantial. But I think the fact that that's gone net negative is going to be noted by the big fish. So that's the key. So tomorrow night you want to be checking these. All right. If they've gone really green, that's going to pump the dollar. Okay. If they've gone really red, then the dollar can dump. So it's very tricky right now because they're both in decline. This one has moved more, but this is the first one to go in decline of the two. Okay, and that's obviously that was the Euro USD buy, and we pumped since, and we have declined somewhat on the euro. So go to yen. Yen, we had a bit of a tricky week because we had that sudden meeting. It was like an emergency meeting of the Bank of Japan, and so that sent quite a lot of shockwaves and jitters, and they're trying to stop the yen from going to free fall. However, we can see we're very negative from the net non-coms, which are the banks and institutions. They're not interested at all in buying the yen, and they're shorting it. As we can see, we have got that support, but it could easily break, and I can see that happening, to be honest, because the market's pushing the BOJ to actually do something, and it's kind of interesting to see a central bank getting bullied, which is really weird. You'd think it'd be the other way around, but it looks like they're pressurizing the Bank of Japan to actually intervene on the FX price. So very interesting. So we've got a decline in the euro, dollar, and yen, and you'll find if we go to the pound, this is also in decline. All right, so be careful with the pound. We have come a long way off the high, 70,000 to 53 to 35. So it's halved, really, isn't it? It's come off really off the high there. And so Aussie, we can also see, is not in decline. It's actually ticking up ever so slightly. So you could theoretically look for longs on the Aussie. Potentially, they have stopped that move south. This could just be a retracement, though, to be fair, and we might continue lower. However, we are more positive than the week prior. So from an Aussie perspective, it isn't that bad. But I've got a feeling this could just be like a dead cat bounce where it did this, boom, it might go boom like that. So you want to be careful. If we come to the scores, Aussie has got quite a weak score on average. It's not as weak as the New Zealand dollar. Right? So it's not that good. And we can see the Aussie pairs are also range as well. Because of that, you really want to sit on your hands, because if it says range, you're going to go sideways and it's going to grind up to take stops, then come back down to take stops, then up and down and up and down. It won't actually trend in a good way where you can get a good profit. You're not going to get a good risk to reward if it's ranging, because it's just going to go sideways. So this is why you've got to be careful with the Aussie. The COT data is indicative of perhaps a tick higher, but the market bias is range. So be careful with the Australian dollar, I think. And it might be telling us a little bit of a risk off scenario brewing. We looked at copper last week, and that looked quite heavy as well. So done pound, CADs you're going to see it's in decline. So that's of note. Okay, so a lot of things are in decline apart from the Aussie. Okay, gold. Well, we're all-time high, but we have to remember that this is from Tuesday. Okay, so we hadn't made all-time high at that point. We actually made it Thursday, I think Thursday night. This doesn't mirror what we actually saw up to the tail end of the week, but it is reflective of anything up to that date. All right, so this I think will be higher up this time next week, or it could, on the other hand, it could be a scenario where price has gone up really, really high in order to sell. It's not an impossible situation where they pump price and then they could dump it. It is worth noting that we had a Powell speech on Friday and he was quite hawkish, and normally that would send things like the dollar higher and gold down. Okay, normally. However, we saw a strange thing last week, the week prior. We had a Powell speech and the market and saw it as being dovish, and then we saw a big reversal the next day. So it might be a bit tricky. It looks like the market is looking at Powell and then just being quite uncertain. There's a lot of uncertainty with that. And like I said in one of my videos, is that if the herd go really strongly one way, there has to be someone to counter that trade. So if they buy the dollar, it's going to get sold off. So it might be that there's more power on the retail sentiment as opposed to like how we've interpreted Powell. How the markets have interpreted his dovishness or hawkishness. It could be that retail sentiment is more powerful than that understanding, the interpretation of his guidance going forward. So it could be that the retail sentiment is just like mega strong right now because we saw so much flip flop on the dollar, and because we saw the change in the retail sentiment, and it was reflective of that. So it doesn't help when the herd go one way and then the next day they flip. It doesn't help. So it's quite tricky currently. So you've got to be a bit careful with gold because Powell's hawkish. It could send it lower. But like I said, we saw a big reversal. So you want to be careful. It's very, very tricky right now, especially if the herd is skewing things slightly as well. New Zealand dollar should be quite soft. Yeah. And that's reflective of that. So we've got a poor QDB score and a poor fundamental score. So really I could call that fundamental score. But anyway, hopefully everyone understands that what the market structure summary is the fundamental score that takes into account GDP, unemployment, COT data, and inflation change as well. So hopefully everyone understands what that is. So come back. So therefore, we had a poor score on our sheet, so we had a poor score on the COT data, so it doesn't look that good for the New Zealand dollar. Lastly, Swiss franc. And then we'll wrap up the video, and we are in decline on the Swiss franc. So I wish you a great Easter. I'll be around tomorrow night. I'm not going to be trading tomorrow, but I'll be around tomorrow night about 8 p.m. UK time. Okay, so have a great weekend. I'll speak to you soon.